about these loans is that people always ask, well, what if we run into stuff that nobody knew about? Okay. So HUD consultant is tasked with at the beginning of the project, when he does the work write-up, he looks at the quality of the house, tries to assume whether or not there's going to be any hidden deficiencies that nobody knows about at this point, and put together either a 10%, a 15%, or a 20% contingency fund that goes on top of the bids. So if you've got a $100,000 bid, you're going to have anywhere from $110,000 to $115,000 to $120,000 mortgage, or not mortgage, but that's going to be your renovation number. Okay, because the HUD consultant's going to build in for possible deficiencies that nobody knows about. Now, if you have a property that does not have water, does not have working water or working electricity at the time of either the inspection or the feasibility, it's an automatic 20%. So they used to allow us to go to 15%, but they won't do it anymore. Evidently, there have been some problems throughout the U.S. with.
Actually, we're doing 10% and 15.
You're doing 10 and 15?
10 and 15. If there's no utilities turned on, it's 15.
Okay.
If the utilities are on, 10.
10. Yeah, utilities I don't have a problem with 10. Sometimes, based on the type of the house, I would probably push for 20 until the lender maybe go down to 15. And I do occasionally get an underwriter that will come back and they will request that we reduce the contingency down based upon some criteria that they're looking at that I'm not privy to. So we do have times where I've knocked it down from 20 to 15. But if I've got an older house like this one that we were doing here, I was an automatic 20% on that. Okay. And I would probably be pretty adamant about that up until somebody essentially said, well, it's going to be 15, you need to change it. Okay. Because there again, I'm tasked with protecting, in my opinion, I'm tasked with protecting two people, actually three people. HUD number one, but number two, the general contractor and the borrower both. If we don't have enough money to finish the project, then it just gets really ugly. Okay? So if we've got an old house like this and you start popping out the windows, because you're putting in new windows, and you start taking the siding off, you know that there's rot there that nobody can see. So you've got to have enough money. You have to have enough money to take care of that. So after the draws has been completed, we get it into the bank turns it around, gets it out to the general contractor. Like I said, we can do up to 6 draws. Some banks are holding at 5, but HUD is trying to push up to 6 now. These are a great product, in my opinion. I don't generally think that the federal government gets much stuff right, but I think this is a good product. I do a lot of them every year. This is essentially all I do anymore, and the transformation from some houses from where they started to what they finish up with are just absolutely amazing. And the vision that some of your borrowers have, sometimes I just go, man, this one just needs to be dozed over. I don't see it. And they get done with it, and it's really a work of art. So, any questions for anybody?
Yeah, so I've heard loan limits of 30,000 right now. Heard you say things like 120,000. What are the limits of the loan amount?
So what I think you're talking about is what they call the limited program.
Limited, you said was 30,000.
Yeah, limited is 30,000, and then the full, you know what they can go up to? It depends on the county, but
Depends on the county. Your county loan limits right now for FHA is 423.
Okay, so
if you had a $200,000 house and the loan limit was 423, you could put 220,000 in it, assuming they would qualify.
Correct.
assuming all the numbers fit.
Yeah. Now, there is one thing on the limiteds. There's one thing that you need to keep in mind is that HUD builds in they build in some numbers there that change that $30,000. They build in your closing costs. They also build in a minimum of a 10% contingency for cost overruns. So you've got to scale back the repairs to make sure that once you add those fees in, 10% in, that you're going to be under 30,000. I usually tell people that they probably should keep those bids somewhere around $22,000 to $25,000, kind of depending.
And it sounds like it's gonna be more cost effective on the 30,000, that's just cosmetic, really, that you were kind of discussing. But, I guess, when we're, as realtors, making offers, we have to specify the loan program within the actual contract. And we have to get permission with the owner if we're gonna change the contract in the direction. So we might try to eliminate or maybe go full. Does the limited require, you said it doesn't require a HUD consultant, right? So that's gonna obviously prolong the time of limited in a pool. So I'd like to know the scope of timelines expected or anticipated for a limited, so that we can, articulate that to the sellers on our buyer's behalf, because we already have to wait for the appraisal once all the information's put together versus ordering an appraisal right now today on a property. So if our client wants just cosmetics on a property that somebody will take right now conventional, are we in competition? Is there an ability to be competitive still in timelines?
I would think so. I think what you're running into there would be, I think the issue would be making sure that and I'm not sure how the sales contract gets written up. I think you have to indicate what type of, you have to indicate if it's going to be limited or full for you.
As a matter of fact, you can always change on an addendum what program it might change to.
It has to be accepted by the seller, right?
Yes, absolutely. And that's one of the things that can be changed on an addendum. Now, keep in mind, when you've approved somebody, when the customer has come in and got a loan commitment letter from Movement Mortgage, it's usually for a dollar amount, how much the payment can be, right? But then they go shopping, a lot of times they find a house that turns out to be a nightmare, okay? Usually during that first 10-day inspection period, it turns out to be, the roof is shot. And then a lot of these properties are as is. And REO properties, the bank's not gonna do anything, right? That's when you convert the deal to a 203K or a home style loan, okay? Just do it on an addendum. Does that work? But it gets better than that. Here's one other thing, just keep in your noggin, is let's say you are already in the process, an appraisal has already been ordered, and everything's moving right along, and then the appraiser calls for a new roof. What do? Then you try to renegotiate that deal, right? Guess what? This is what's really neat. On a 203K, the appraised value is bumped up 10%. So you've got, on let's say a $300,000 loan, you can use that same appraisal and get $30,000 worth of work done just flipping it to a 203K, and you don't need a new appraisal. How do you like that? So we're all about solutions. And there's a lot of things that you can do during the process of the transaction. There you go.
Yeah, the other thing that happens quite often is that they do get kicked from a limited up to a full, and there can be a variety of reasons. But keep in mind that if you have a home inspection already done and you want to go limited, if there's essentially any structural, and here's where HUD gets a little touchy, is that if you've got a 4x4 post in a crawl space that's rot damaged, okay, and has to be replaced, under the HUD guidelines, that's structural. So it automatically, regardless of it could have been a $20,000 limited renovation, it's going to go to a full. It may still only stay at 20 grand, but it's going to go to a full based on the fact that the appraiser has kicked it up, because when he looks at the bids, which you'll get a copy of the bids, and it shows that there's crawl space repairs, they'll automatically kick it up. Okay.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
That's a really good question. Most streamlines, you're limited. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Most streamlines are limited, 203Ks are closed within 30 days. Okay? On the very outside, it's 45 days, and the usual issue that causes the delay is because we haven't identified a contractor early enough in the process. Okay? That's the real biggest secret of the whole thing. Identify a really good contractor, and if you don't know one, Larry can point you in the right direction. This last one, Larry, this customer, I kid you not, they got at least 50 bids, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
And it just delayed the whole thing. I couldn't order the appraisal, couldn't do anything until they finally defined who the contractor was gonna be. And then Larry comes in and says, well, why didn't you use, who was it, Andrew?
No, it was American Legacy, Jeremy from Mayor.
Jeremy, that's right, Jeremy. And it's like, why did we beat ourselves to death trying to find our own guy? You don't work with these guys all the time. Larry will point you in the right direction, okay? Anyway, Jeremy came in with a bid that was like,
Okay, it was more than competitive, yeah.
yeah, well, way below some of the others. So we got right onto that, and Jeremy knew exactly what he needed to get done, and it was very Johnny on the spot. We closed that very quickly. So, yes?
I just want to give a ringing endorsement for Larry,
Oh.
Trudy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I got involved with Larry this summer. I was in a 203K loan with a mortgage company that didn't know how to service this. And the first call I should have made, which I should have been told, was to call a HUD consultant, because then everything else falls into place. We already had a contractor, we had the appraisal, and then because the loan was sent out of state, now that's a question I have, because it's a HUD loan, are these necessarily sent out of state?
That's a
That would be
really
my
good
keeping it
question. That's a really good question. When you do a loan with Movement Mortgage on any of these renovation loans, Movement Mortgage does not sell the loan to secondary until the project is completed.
I think that's what happened.
That's
Okay.
huge.
That's what
Ours
happens
went to
on
New
yours.
Jersey, and so going back and forth.
Yeah.
And so then we finally found a list of HUD consultants, and there aren't that many people.
I think there's
that-
only 3 of him in the
Yeah,
whole state.
Yeah, so Larry
Okay.
saved me. We closed 5 weeks late. It was a nightmare, but you came in and you saved me, and we had to do a few things over again. But again, on the contractor, we probably would have gone with another contractor simply because this is that knows how to do these loans and knows the hoops that you have to go through too. That was a big deal. I talked to Jeremy afterwards.
Oh, good.
Right, yeah. I think they were the same contractor that we had, but, yeah, call Larry, that's all I can say.
Call Larry.
Call Larry
Call Larry.
first, as soon as
Larry
you get mutual
knows.
acceptance if you have one of these loans.
Yeah, the only person that's done more 203Ks than me is Larry. Isn't that about right? So, yeah, Larry knows. Yes, sir.
Hey Larry, you said you did 50 of them last year.
I'm sorry, say that again?
You did 50 of these project last year.
Yes, we have 50 of them in, now, when I say that, they're essentially, we did 50 of them from, they're either in one phase, we've either just started them, or they were completed, but yeah, we had over 50.
What was the most expensive one?
200, there was a guy over in Beaverton that they did not want to move. They had looked all over for a new house, and they decided that they wanted to do an addition, put a second-story addition on, and I think that one was $220,000. I got a call 2 days ago for one over in, because I'm licensed in Western Washington as well, I think that one's going to be close to $250,000. Other than that, a lot of stuff at $120,000, $160,000. Probably 40% or 50% of them last year were probably somewhere around the $60,000 to $90,000. Doing an addition off the house. I'll tell you what's really big. Did like 5 of these last year, and Portland is big on ADUs. Okay, and trust me on this. It used to be that it had to be the ADU had to be attached to the house. Portland does not care. Okay, if you got a big enough lot in Portland, you can they'll allow you to put a detached ADU, and those things were amazing. I mean, a little like 800 square foot, two-story, 800 square foot house with a sleeping loft and stuff in it, and they're renting them out for like $2,200 a month. I mean, they were gold.
What is the average cost of ADU that size?
I would say on, let's see, on that one was 180,000, I think.
Yeah, Brian, when you start this process, we're getting all these bids, so you get all the bids from the contractors. Do you close right after you get those bids in and the time that the contractor's going to start in? When do you close?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, as soon as the appraisal's done, that's really what gives us our marching orders to go ahead and proceed forward. We're usually closing about a week after the appraisal's done on these 203Ks or home style loans. And they get their money on a streamline, the limited. You get half the money up front and half the money when the entire project is done. Nobody gets paid until the whole project's done. So keep that in mind. On the others,
The problem is the contractors are so busy right now.
yes.
Some of them are out, you know, like 6 months or something like that. Have you run into that, Larry?
Yeah, I have run into it, and here's what I can tell you about that generally is the case. The contractors are very busy. I have, I would say, about 5 different general contractors that primarily work in the 203K, and they've gotten big enough that they can respond quick enough, number one, just to get out and do the bid, and number two, if the project does go, they have enough manpower that they can get it done. So if you are having problems with general contractors, give me a call. I'll give you some names, and you can fill them out and talk to them. There are a couple of guys that are really big into it, that do an excellent job. To answer your first question a little bit further is that, like Brian touched, the appraisal, once the appraisal's done, but remember that he can't order the appraisal until I've completed my work. So if the general contractor is taking time to get out to the project, and then he takes more time to get his bids done, I mean, I've got one right now that I did the feasibility study 2.5 or 3 weeks ago, and every Monday they call me and say, yeah, my contractor's gonna have his bids in for me. He just about got them. Well, so there's, 3 weeks that nothing's happened. So as soon as he gets his bids together, then I gotta try and do my job. And if he's took 3 weeks to put it together, my assumption is that the bid's not gonna be very good. I'm gonna have to go back and ask him questions probably 3 or 4 times. So they'll have another bit of a wait, so.
I have a question on the ADUs.
Yes.
Or detached or attached. Are we still part of the deal, the realtor? Because it's just an addition to their existing home on the loan, when you close.
I would say 90% of the time, no, because
Yeah.
what's usually happening on those is that's an existing property that's already owned by the person that's building the ADU. So I have seen, we did have one project where it was a purchase and they were doing a renovation on the house. And then they had a detached garage that they were turning into an ADU. So on that one, it was the real estate agent was involved in that whole package on that one.
Are there any special hoops that a person would have to jump through if they are actually a contractor? They're purchasing a home for themselves, they're going to remodel it, and if they wanted to get a loan like this, can they be the contractor for their own home?
That's a really good question. The answer is no. Okay,
like a horror
can I
story
elaborate
about it.
on that just a little bit? Yeah, just elaborate just a tiny bit.
Okay.
Even if you, as the homeowner that's gonna be buying the house for yourself to live in, and it's a fixer-upper, and you're a general contractor, guess what? You cannot do your own deal. Okay. The reason being is, what if you get hit by a bus? Who knows? Get the flu, who knows? Anything can happen, right? The bank is on the hook with the money, everything in place to have this done within a defined period of time. Okay? So it's always best to have a third party on the hook to get the work done according to the bank specifications. And you got a story.
Oh, yeah, got a
Okay.
doozy. So about 5 years ago, I get a call from this guy. He says, I've got a 203K I want to do on my existing house. Okay. So I get there, and they have a general contractor there, and we go through all the stuff. We work it all out, and loan closes. Unbeknownst to me, the guy that said he was the general contractor when he was there was a straw contractor, and the borrower's brother was going to do the work, okay, who had just gotten out of prison. Okay? Now, I'm not exaggerating. Okay? Now, I knew none of this at the time. Here's how I found it out. The two brothers got in an argument, and the one brother put the other brother in the hospital, and it all just kind of fell apart at that point because they ended up filing charges against each other, and then it came back to me. And so what we had to do at that point was go in and find another general contractor that would come in and finish the project with the amount of money that was left to finish the project. And we actually got it done. It was not, it wasn't easy. And one of the guys that I recommend business to all the time is the guy that took care of that. He did a great job on it. But yeah, it was actually even uglier than that.
So, tell me a little bit about credit restrictions for the borrower.
That actually is
That's a
going to be.
lender question.
That's a lender
Yes.
question.
Okay, bottom line is this. If you have an FHA borrower, we do an FHA 203K. FHA is generally anything under a 700 credit score is what we usually consider an FHA borrower, right? If they had bankruptcies, whatever. But if they are a higher credit score, usually above 700, we usually turn that to a home style loan. The rules and everything are almost identical with the exception of condos. It's almost straight down the line, okay? So credit, to answer your question, anything under 700 is generally an FHA 203K. We can go down as low as this 580. Okay? 580.
What is a home style loan?
Home style loan, it's exactly like a 203K, but it's conventional financing. And all the conventional rules apply. What that means, and I hope your ears are open on this little secret, you can do a home style loan as an investor. FHA is for owner occupied only, correct? On a home style, an investor can get a conventional loan, right? All the same conventional rules apply that way. Okay? Yes, question? I wish. No. So basically, FHA 203K, the loan limits are based on the county limit size. Right now, you go down into Marion County, it really drops bad, okay? But right here in the Portland Metro, it's the 423. Conventional loan limits are now 453.1.
Correct.
Okay? So conventional, you have a few extra dollars to work with.
Brian?
Yeah.
She's been waiting over here.
Oh, yeah, regarding the limited loan, let's say most of the stuff is all cosmetic, but there's one item like it needs a new sewer line. Will they still do that as long as?
That's a
it's all-
perfect question, and I'll tie that one in with your question right here. How long does it take to get a full 203K done that way? Okay. On an item like a sewer line, especially if it has to tie into the city sewer lines, guess what? That's gonna need a permit, right? That's gonna need a permit. Anything that requires a permit has to go to the full.
Yeah.
Correct? And the only thing that's gonna make the transaction go longer than the 30 days is, number one, it's gonna be a good contractor, number one. But the second piece to that puzzle is anytime you're involving the county in getting permits, that could take a couple extra weeks, maybe a month. So on fulls, consider 45 to 60 days. All right?
So what interest rates and terms are they looking at? Is it kind of like a construction firm one where it's a different one until after the project's complete, or is it one interest rate that's the whole life?
Yeah, it's just the one interest rate, the entire full life of the loan. On an FHA 203K, they're gonna have so much equity in the house after they close. 1 year has to go by, and then we usually refinance them into a conventional loan, okay, to drop the mortgage terms, just like any other FHA we can try to do. But you have to be in the property for 1 year for seasoning of that appraisal, okay? The appraisal needs to season for 12 months, and then we could refinance that out. Now, on conventional, they can drop the MI, if there is MI, they can drop the MI after the 2 years as soon as they pay their value down below the 8%.
So is there a premium over what the going rate is?
As far as rate is concerned, it's usually 0.25% higher in interest rate, approximately. So it's a little bit more expensive, but goodness sakes, for a $20,000 improvement to the house, let's say you're putting on a new roof, the payment is only gonna go up about $5 per thousand, right? So what is that, $100 a month for a brand new roof? That's not a bad deal. They're not having to cough up a bunch of cash up front. There you go.
The one area where people get in trouble on these, hopefully I didn't say this before, senior moment, but where agents get in trouble is that you have a poorly qualified buyer with no money who wants to move into a house and just get in, and then they're going to do everything themselves. These loans are not structured for that. They don't work. By the time you do the feasibility study, it just goes south because it's apparent that it just isn't going to work. There's just too much to be done. They don't have the qualifications to do it. They don't have the money to do it. So just be aware of that. Usually, one of the reasons I did a lot more feasibilities last year than I did fulls is that by the time I got done with the feasibility, it was apparent to the real estate agent and the borrower that it wasn't going to work. There was just too much money that had to be done, too many repairs that had to be done.
Questions?
I'm going to stick around afterwards. If anybody has any additional questions or anything, we do have some information on our website. You can go to inspectechwest.com. If you're trying to book home inspections, scopes, radon, you can do that online. If you need to have me come out and do a feasibility study, you have to either send me an email or call me direct, and I do answer my phone. So you just have to, because I don't put those online, but give me a call if I can help any of it. And if you have any questions at all about anything, as you probably guessed, I'm kind of passionate about this program and I like talking about it, so I'll be glad to answer anybody's questions at any time. Hey, thank you all for coming. I know it was tough for you
Guys, seriously, if you really need a really, really good home inspector, you got Larry and Corey. They're awesome, okay? Use them wherever you can. And if you have a situation, especially if it's one of those hard to finance type properties, and you kind of, in the back of your mind, know that it might be an issue, go to Larry first right out of the gate, and he'll